So I have a little chunk of clay. What I want to do with that is kind of compress it, assuming it's kneaded and smooth and ready to go is the softness you want. So it's going to look like this. My hand is curved, my other hand is curved, and I'm just slapping that. This is compressing the clay and shaping it. So if you remember, clay at a microscopic level resembles platelets, and by compressing them, the clay will hold its shape better. Okay, that's good enough. Notice I got some of the wrinkles and stuff out of there. Now, one of the things that you're going to need with a larger piece is paying attention to ergonomics, the shape and position of your hands and your body. So I'm going to start the same way. I want to keep my hand curved, resist the temptation, don't put it down on a flat surface. Keep it in your hands until it's strong enough to put on the rim. So right in the middle, thumbs down, and turn. Got to keep it turning. If you don't keep it turning, you're making an unsymmetrical hole. Actually, asymmetrical would be the correct terminology. So see how I have a nice round opening happening there. I'm going all the way down, but I'm leaving a little thicker bottom. You guys did a good job with your pinch pots, the practice ones, having it around a quarter inch at the diameter of a pencil. A bigger pot though can be thicker. Okay, so now I'm ready to start lifting. Remember, we're not pinching, technically it's called throwing, but we're moving the clay up. We're shaping the pot. And if you think about it, I need to decide the angles of the walls before I start making it. So if I want a wide, shallow shape, here's what I'm gonna do. Pay attention to the angle of the forearm. So if I hold this up, see how my forearm goes out. So if I pinch this way and turn, my arm is naturally gonna make a shape that's wider and lower. If I want a more vertical shape, I'm going to lower this down. So this is where you might want to stand up while you work. Or if it's a smaller piece, at least hold it down in your lap. So it's basically, if you imagine a center axis from your pot going vertically, the angle of your arm compared to that. So if this is the center axis and my arm is out, that's kind of the wall direction that I will probably get. So I'm going to start lifting and turning. Because it's a lot of clay, I'm using a lot of surface area on my fingers. Mainly my middle finger and forefinger here. So I'm turning and lifting, turning and lifting, turning and lifting. One difference with this larger clay though is I'm actually using my other hand to just kind of support and even out the clay. I'm getting that familiar shape. Hopefully it seems familiar where it's thinner down here and fatter up here. That's what we want. The top is a circle. That shape is what's holding the clay in. Sometimes it seems like your outside hands are not doing anything and your thumb is moving down, which is kind of funny because I'm moving the clay down and yet the pot is getting taller, you know? But really it's all relative. So as I turn, I want to continue to think about the angle of my arm compared to the pot and is it going the way I want it to go? So you got to get it up to eye level and look sometimes. So continuing to turn and pinch. The rim should always be the thickest part, just like the little ones. Do you see it looks like my fingers on the outside are just going like this? But if you can see the inside, my thumb is moving down every single time. Every single time my thumb is moving down. Okay, now, starting to resemble kind of a bowl form. What if this is already starting to go out too wide and I want to bring it in? I need to think about this early. If you look at the circle shape here, that diameter is really important because if I want the walls to go out more, what's going to happen to the diameter? It's going to get wider. It's going to become a larger diameter circle. If I want the walls to go in, then a smaller diameter is what's going to happen. So here's how this can look. In order to do this, you do need to be able to put it on a surface. So what I'm going to do is just put it upside down. And on my pot, this isn't the finished foot. I just need to be able to support it. I'm going to just create that slight flat area. It's going to sit stable. Okay. So what I can do is I am going to hold it opposite of me on the far side of the pot. And basically I want to shrink the circle. So I'm going to push the clay in and together like this. Kind of exaggerating it here a little bit, just so you can see the movement that's happening. Okay, it's all wrinkly now. That's okay. What I'm going to do is get this back in my hands and smooth it on the inside and on the outside. Redistribute that clay. Now it's kind of curved in, but as I continue to pinch this up, it's going to naturally move back into the shape that I want. Next week, I'll continue to show you strategies to change and modify the shape and add on components. Okay, there's another way to do this. It's called darting. So darting works like this. It's actually something used in fashion design. Have you ever had something tailored, like a prom dress or anything like that? Sometimes you have to get it fitted. One of the things that happens is they need to customize it to your torso, right? So if they need to take it in somewhere, on a leg, on an arm, on a torso, they need to reduce the amount of fabric, right? So they're going to remove some fabric and then sew it together. That's basically what happened on here. Let me grab a knife to really come in a lot more. Maybe I'm making a round shape or something like that. Here's what I can do. I'm going to mark off equidistant spots just with my knife. Whatever you do, you want to do it symmetrically unless you're making an asymmetrical pot on purpose. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice a V shape. The angle and height of the V depends on what your goals are. So I've removed some clay. Since this is fresh, soft clay I just started working with, I can just squish it together and smooth it out. If this were day-old clay, if I started this a previous class, I'm going to have to score and slip that clay. Here's how you then put it together. Fingers on the outside, kind of grip it. I want to be careful not to squish the walls. I'm going to push it in starting at the very bottom. Just squish it together with a little bit of pressure. Why would I not want to do more than one at a time? It's going to go and kind of collapse. So we need the strength of the rest of the sides. I have this weird seam, so I'm going to just use my hands and just kind of pinch that and start smoothing it out. Also smoothing it on the inside, always supporting the walls as you go. Now if you pinch that really hard, what are you doing? You're stretching out the clay and you're kind of defeating the purpose of what you just did. So pay attention to what you're doing and how you're touching and how you're supporting the clay. In general, you don't want this flopping around a lot or it's going to cause you problems. Okay? On additional clay. So this is pretty soft. I just made it, but it's firmed up enough so it could hold more weight. This one, if I added more clay on top, isn't it going to just kind of keep going like this? The extra weight is just going to smush it out. Your pot will just get wider and wider and wider. We don't want that. So to add more height, you can do this all by hand, but I also have a tool called a pony roller back here. It's in the bin labeled pony rollers. It's like this. So what I'm going to do is grab some clay. If it's soft, the more you mess with it, it's going to dry out and dry out and dry out. You want it to stay soft, so don't mess with it a long time. I'm going to just squeeze it. Depending on the size of the pot, I might make a smaller shape or even roll it a little bit. I'm going to use this just to flatten it out. I want to go too thin. Definitely don't want to go thinner than the wall thickness of the pot. This goes on the inside, like so. Now, if you had enough clay, it would have been long enough to go all the way around, but couldn't I just get another piece and fill that in? Here's how this works. I'm going to support the outside, and then I'm going to smooth the inside down into the pot. Can you kind of see that? So, smoothing it to the pot. Now, if this were older clay, if it were leather hard, what would I have to do to attach it? Score and slip, exactly. I always put it to the inside because clay wants to go out. My first ceramics teacher in college said every pot wants to be a bowl, and that's just because of gravity, wanting to bring things down. Then I'm going to do the same to the outside. I'm going to smooth that up. If the clay is too dry, it won't smooth quite as evenly, as easily, so you could always add in a little bit of clay to just fill in that gap. But it's adding height without changing the shape a lot. And I'll go in with more gentle fingers and continue to smooth, continue to smooth. And remember some of our other smoothing strategies, like how we use the serrated rib to make grooves and then use the smooth one to smooth it out. That can also be helpful in a place like this. Okay? If I were building something really tall, I could keep going, right? The key though is the area where I want to add more clay, this part of the pot needs to be soft. Below that needs to start to set up so it's strong enough to hold it, but never more than leather hard. If it ever goes like brittle and dry, then you've got some problems, okay? That's all right. This clay is almost leather hard, but not quite. And because of the size of the pot I'm making, it's also close to a 1/2 inch thick. So you have that, then use your smooth metal rib and make sure it's clean on the edges. This is not just about looks, it's about strength. But if I waited too long to do this, if this becomes too firm, it's going to be much harder to smooth it out. It's still a compression, I'm not scraping away the clay. You can go into a couple different directions as well. All right, there's also one strategy that the serrated rib helps with. It helps you identify dents and bumps. So if I take the clay, I can tell there's a little dent here, and if I scratch across the surface, do you see how it did not touch the clay there? That means that is a dent, and that is a bump, right? So, what could I do? I could continue to do this strategy if it's close, that would be fine. But another move is simply, you go on the inside, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna support the clay here, and then on the inside I'm gonna push it out there. So I'm alternating my pressure to even out bumps. So I could do it the same on the opposite direction if I had somewhere I wanted to move in. Also from the direction I'm standing, I'm looking down the angle of the pot visually, and it makes it easier to see those bumps. The bumps might be harder to see looking from a distance. So if you're looking down the wall of the pot, you're gonna see those a little bit more easily. And you're gonna refine that. Adding on clay, additional clay. You can see that the rim height on this is not perfectly level, right? That's okay. It's equal thickness, and the angles are what I wanted. I want this to grow just a little bit taller, and then I want it to be level. There's two strategies. One strategy is you can score and slip a coil, probably even a fatter coil than this, on the rim. Once you attach that, you smooth it down, just like we did on Adele's, and then you can pinch it up. And then once that sets up a little bit, you can do it again and again, and you can build almost infinitely. But use a fat enough coil so that when you pinch it and it gets thinner, it becomes the thickness you want it to be. Whereas mine right now is almost the thickness of my clay. Do I have much clay to pinch? Not really. So you would do a thicker coil if you're using that strategy. The one that I want to show you though is what was in.
Yeah.